That brings me to my 8th grade year. I went in for just a annual checkup. My mom was with me, and my pediatrician told me that I should get the Gardasil vaccine. And so I didn't know anything about it, obviously. And my mom actually told him no, not because she had concerns of safety, but just because she thought it was unnecessary, because he told her it was for HPV. And she was saying, well, my daughter's 13. We can probably wait on that. We don't need to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when he said, well, don't you want to protect your daughter from cervical cancer? And obviously, whoa, cancer, that's a scary word for a lot of people. And so for me at 13, I'm thinking, oh man, like I should really get this. It's going to protect me from cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, I feel bad for her. To this day, she feels guilty because in the office, he guilted her and basically he continued this conversation trying to tell her she was a horrible parent if she didn't get this vaccine for me, because I'm going to be at risk for cancer. Basically making it seem like I would die of cancer without this vaccine.
Right.
And we can get to it later, but factually, that is a lie. And that's actually why people are suing Merck right now for fraud, because none of those claims are true. So anyways, my mom feels guilty. I feel scared. We felt pressured. And honestly, that was the first time we've ever seen that side of my pediatrician, because we had never protested or gone against what he was saying before. And now all of a sudden, the nice guy we had known was not so nice. And so, the pressure was there, and I ended up getting the first shot. And after the first shot, I did not have any negative reactions that I could tell. I didn't notice any changes. It was really after the second dose, because Gardasil is a 3-dose series. It was after the second shot that I started having all of these health issues.
And how long is in between each shot usually?
A couple months.
Okay.
Yeah. So this I started the series in 2014, and then I finished it in 2015.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so did you get all 3 shots?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I, like I said, we didn't know that vaccines even came with risks. You know, when you're in the office, they don't give you the vaccine package insert. They don't tell you about the clinical trials, and they don't say, just so you know, this is like the side effects that could happen. They just, they sell it to you, really. And,
or pressure you, which is what you experienced.
Right, exactly. So when I was getting these vaccines and then I started having the health issues, we weren't looking to the vaccine at all as a cause. We were just thinking that this was just happening to me. So that's why I finished the series, even though I'll tell you what happened after the second shot, but we didn't even think at the time that it was related.
Well, and I think that is one of the biggest issues here, is that it's not always just like bang, bang, right? It's not like you get it and then you get a symptom.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes it is, that does happen, but more often than not, it's you get it and then a little while later, or even after a second dose or a different vaccine or whatever, you start to develop something after some time. And so, and then couple that with the fact that your doctors are not, I mean, we'll get more into this, I think, too, but like, not only do you say they don't give you your package inserts, but like many of them have never even read them. Right. So like they don't even,
they're not very well educated on the actual side effects or how to monitor them or even how to report them.
Right.
So it's
it's on from both sides, where you're uninformed, they're uninformed. And so, but not just uninformed, but they are also conditioned to believe that it's impossible for it to be harmful. So they're going to look at any other possibility, and there's such a distance in between the shot and then the symptom that they just don't ever, not never, but they often don't connect those dots. And so
and it's part of the reason why vaccine injuries are so seriously underreported.
And so there was the HHS funded study, right, a few years ago that found, what was it, less than 1% that are reported?
They were saying that less than 1% of vaccine injuries are actually reported. And honestly, I think it would probably be even worse than that.
That wouldn't surprise me, right? Because of all of those factors. So it's not always obvious that that was the trigger. And it might not only be the only trigger, right? It's that coupled with a bunch of other things as well or a certain condition that you might be in, that it's going to trigger something, and so it just, people aren't looking for it, and they're not taught to look for it, and the scientists aren't looking for it because they're taught to not look for it, and so people are not seeing it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So so I go and I get the second shot, and that's really when things started to go downhill. And within a week of that second shot, I started to have headaches, and they started off just like these small, kind of pressure points in my forehead. And then, it starts progressing to the point where I'm having this sharp stabbing pain at the base of my skull. And I have to use my hands to show it, because it would wrap like from the back of my skull all the way around my head in like this vice grip. I've never felt anything like that before.
Yeah.
Extremely painful, very debilitating, basically making me bedridden, because you can't function through it.
No, I used to get migraines all the time when I was a kid, and like you're completely like disabled. You can't move, you can't think, you can't, like, you can hopefully sleep. That's like your only hope.
Right, exactly. And it felt like there was a lot of pressure. And I often would tell my mom it felt like my brain was on fire. Like that was really the only way to describe it. Yeah. And so, it got to the point where I was waking up with migraines, going to sleep with migraines. And I was having other neurological issues like brain fog. I was slurring my speech. I was having severe memory loss. Like I could not remember conversations or situations. And so, all of these neurological things are starting to happen. And then I started developing these digestive issues. And this was all within, a week to 2 weeks, maybe a month of that second shot. So it wasn't like seriously a long time away. It was concentrated around the shot. So I started getting these digestive issues where I'm having severe abdominal pain, very much bloated, and everything I ate was making me nauseous. I was having acid reflux, and I was severely constipated. I could not go to the bathroom for weeks at a time. And again, had never had abdominal or digestive issues before. And then I start having these muscular and joint issues. So, earlier I mentioned I had been playing volleyball. I couldn't play anymore because I was, I'd have these muscle spasms, and it was to the point where on several occasions my coach would have to wheel me off the court in a chair because I couldn't walk. My legs were and she could see the muscles were contracting ridiculously, and it was incredibly painful. I was having joint pain in my wrists, especially the right wrist. I remember I told my friend one day when we were in our science class, I was like, I think I'm pretty sure I broke my wrist here. Like it hurt so bad. It was, but there was nothing wrong. I would go and get x-rays because of this pain, nothing wrong. Right. And so the joint pain was in my wrists, my knees, and my ankles too. And my ankles would consistently swell, during activities. And then I was having lower back pain. My hips were popping out of place, which was really weird. A lot of doctors I was seeing were marking on why my legs were different lengths because the hips were popping out of place. And so, just all very weird things. And it was unfortunate. I think the hardest part for me was the volleyball aspect, because I felt like I was letting my teammates down. Like my motor reflexes were off. I couldn't respond as quickly. I couldn't play. I was, they were watching me run off the court in pain. And I mean, it makes me choked up just thinking about it. It was hard because to the outside, I looked fine to people. Right. And they, I didn't want people to think, oh, I'm making up my illness. Like I'm choking on the court. Right. It was very real experiences for me. But a lot of people didn't believe it, unfortunately. Because on the outside, I looked okay, which honestly, that's what happens with a lot of people with chronic illness. Yep. So, okay, other issues. If you see me looking, I wrote a list to make sure I don't forget anything, because it's quite a lot that was going on. But my hair was falling out in chunks. And, I've always had like thick curly hair, and it went pin straight dead, was falling out. And I had neuropathy, so like tingling and numbness in my hands.
Nerves and stuff.
Yeah. Right? And I had terrible circulation. So I wouldn't even be anywhere cold, and I would be shivering and I would be freezing. And the really interesting thing is I got my first menstrual cycle ever, like within a week of getting that second shot. And then it never came back for years.
Really?
For like 3.5 years. I just never had another cycle.
Huh.
And then I was also struggling with tonsil stones, which I've never had before. They're like little calcifications. They're like little calcifications in your tonsils.
Okay.
And it's weird. I've kind of been investigating this because it's such like an odd symptom. At first I didn't, even after we figured out I was suffering a reaction to the vaccine, I didn't connect it to tonsil stones. It wasn't until I started meeting people through social media who were remarking like, have you ever had tonsil stones? And I was like, yeah, I did get those. And it's another common thing between Gardasil girls, as I call them. So
interesting.
Really interesting. So I was having all these issues, and, you know, I'm missing school. I'm struggling to even stay on my volleyball team. I'm depressed. I'm not eating. And it's just overall, my health is deteriorating, a really bad situation. And so I go back into my doctor, my pediatrician, because we're looking for help. We're looking, especially with the migraines. We're just looking for some advice, what could be going on. And here's a direct quote. What he said to me: "You're just stressed from school."
Right. All of that stuff.
I just sat there. I looked, and this time my dad was with me, and I looked at him like, are you kidding me? How can you say this? It's not just stress. I'm not stressed at all. I was doing great in school. So then he said, you know what? I'll give you some Excedrin migraine. This should help. It didn't. And then he said, while you're here, just to save you a trip, I see, and you know, you're due for the 3rd shot of Gardasil. Why don't you just get that? And, you know, again, I wasn't even thinking about Gardasil. I wasn't thinking they were connected. Neither was my dad. And so we just thought, oh, that's really smart. Save us a trip.
Right.
We'll get Gardasil now. So I get Gardasil. I go home. And shortly after, my parents found me basically unconscious, curled up in a fetal position on our couch. And they drove me to the hospital immediately. And I was, you know, my mom with the headaches, she used to have me rate on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, how bad is the pain today? And I told her I couldn't rank this. I felt like I was dying. And again, I felt like my brain was, this time, not so much fiery, just like it was going to explode. And the pressure in my skull was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So at this point, we knew this is the vaccine because it had happened so quickly.
Right after.
And we could see the connection. So when we get to the hospital, I was in and out of the hospital for about a week. I missed the last 2 weeks of my 8th grade year. And I'll never forget, I was taking the final exams at home because I couldn't be in school. And while I was in the hospital, I was meeting with different specialists of all kinds. So gastroenterologists, neurologists, pain specialists. I was having my blood drawn, CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, everything. And so when all was said and done, I was just given a slew of conditions that I had never had before. And so I guess I'll just list them off here. I had occipital neuralgia, which is an inflammation of the nerves at the base of your skull, which would explain that pain I was having starting at the base of my skull. I had vaccine-induced encephalitis, which is swelling of the brain, irritable bowel syndrome, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, tendinitis, secondary amenorrhea. So when you get your menstrual cycle and then you lose it. Let's see what else here. Leaky gut, hypothyroidism. The weird thing is I suddenly had a gluten sensitivity among like 20 other food sensitivities out of the blue. And my blood test showed that my blood was extremely high in aluminum and lead. So I also, a lot of...
Is that adjuvanted with aluminum?
Yeah, so the adjuvant in Gardasil is aluminum.
Okay.
It's in Gardasil 9, there's 500 micrograms of aluminum per shot. And the FDA safe limit for aluminum exposure is 25 micrograms. So an insanely large amount of aluminum. If you get all 3 shots, that's way over the FDA safe limit. I wish I would have known that before. And so, yeah, I'm basically just left with a slew of conditions. And, the other thing, a lot of specialists were speculating that I had POTS, which is the postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I never got the specific test for that, but that is one that really plagues Gardasil girls. A lot of us get POTS or POTS-like symptoms, all these autoimmune conditions. But it was weird for me. My heart rate was extremely low. So, a normal heart rate's like 60 to 100, and mine was at 40.
Wow.
And again, no explanation. It was just, oh, that's just happening to you. And so we thought the response from everyone we were seeing was, okay, they're going to want to know about my Gardasil injury. They're going to want to investigate this. What if there's something wrong with that lot of Gardasil? What if other girls get that lot and there's an issue? We weren't even thinking it's just the vaccine in general. We were just thinking they need to start investigating, like there could be a problem with this vaccine right now.
Yeah.
And that was not the response we got at all. And it was terrible because every single person we met with, we were saying, well, what about the Gardasil vaccine? Because she just had that third shot, and she ended up in the hospital right after that with all these issues. And every single person was, it's all in your head. You're just stressed. You're lying. You're making it up. It's impossible. How dare you suggest the vaccine could be related? That vaccine is safe and effective. There are no risks. Any risks are unsubstantiated. And, thank God for my mom at this time, because she was really the one who was being the rock, doing the research, and she was networking. And, it didn't take long. When you just Google Gardasil vaccine injuries, you're going to find a lot. And so she was connecting with a lot of other people and just finding that these Gardasil girls, they have the same exact story as mine, where they are perfectly healthy. They get the vaccine. All of a sudden they have neurological, autoimmune, digestive issues, the whole thing, and so she's, trying to tell these doctors, I've been doing my research. I'm seeing some science that indicates there's risk. I'm meeting a lot of other people who went through the same thing. And just repeatedly we were dismissed, and it was a very frustrating process. And it was kind of like a slap in the face, because we had trusted the medical system and done everything they said. And then when we needed them, they turned their back.
Yeah. Who was held responsible? It was you.
Right. Exactly.
And not just held responsible, but demonized for it almost, right?
Yeah.
It's your fault. Like you're bad for having had these symptoms or these injuries or these, or how dare you even suggest that it could be connected to this?
Right.
Vaccine.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. And there's nothing that'll wake you up to, the problems in our current medical system more than that experience, because it was very eye-opening. And again, these were the pediatrician, especially, that was someone we had really had a good relationship with. And then the second we started asking questions and we went back and we said, look, this happened. And to his credit, his office did file a report to Merck. They did acknowledge it was a vaccine injury, and then they told my mom about theirs. So they encouraged us to file a report to the vaccine adverse event reporting system. So they did do that, but we never went back, and it was a very cold goodbye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that clip, you can find the full interview I did with Lauren by clicking on the link right over there.